All that and more on the way. We've got a panel of guests ready to give us their opinions, but we want to know what you think as well.
That's right. I want to get you involved in our debates today. You can contact us by Facebook and Twitter. Don't forget to use the hashtag BBCSML or text SML followed by your message to 60011. Texts are charged at your standard message rate or email us at sundaymorninglive@bbc.co.uk. However you choose to get in touch, please don't forget to include your name so I can get you involved in our discussions.
Now, before we get stuck into our debates, let's take a look at some of the other talking points from the week.
Joining us are spoken word poet and teacher Jaspreet Kaur, and before he goes on his UK tour, the comedian Geoff Norcott.
Now, Geoff, a story that stood out for you this week on the website iNews. It's about the Church of England. Tell us about it.
Justin Welby has becoming increasingly more vocal on social issues. He said at the TUC conference that Amazon, he equated them with like a modern evil. And then lo and behold, turns out the Church of England Pension Fund have got shares in all sorts of evil organisations, including Amazon, Wonga, the Galactic Empire. So I suppose in a weird way it's a classic example of sort of like judge not lest ye be judged, and I think in a way the church with their dwindling attendance, they could probably learn from Amazon, couldn't they, you know?
Jaspreet, do you think politics and religion should mix?
I just feel, especially in this case, that the church should be separate from those kind of institutions and that kind of side of things, and profit and money and shares. I think it should be something completely separate to what the church are doing. I think their fundamental aim is to be teaching the right values to people and the congregation, and that's what they're meant to be doing. I feel like they shouldn't be getting involved so much in this.
Is he not in a way like as just a modern archbishop, like all modern public figures? He's trying to make a splash, isn't he? He's trying to get trending. He's trying to get the likes and retweets like the rest of us. So it's taking. Hey, look, I'm a comic.
And of course, what he says is they can influence things from within. So it's best to be part of the system rather than out
well, there
of
is talk, isn't there, that the Church of England now might buy out Wonga in a sort of ethical thing. So this could still turn around and be a positive outcome.
And the idea behind that is to help people who are in debt. So so
they don't pass on the debts and that they don't sort of get become higher debts under another lender.
And Geoff, the Archbishop of Canterbury isn't the only religious figure to be involved in the news.
The Dalai Lama. He said a lot of things about migration, including Europe for the Europeans, and I thought, Jesus, you know, like, you really do get right-wing as you get older. Even the Dalai Lama is sounding like sort of UKIP candidate for Thanet South. But he said a lot of things. In a way, some of it got lost was that he was saying that if a war zone becomes derelict, you don't want to just write off a place like all of these great cities in Syria. At some point, there is a hope that people would return there, but it was certainly unusual phrasing for a man of peace and love.
So, Jaspreet, as a former teacher, this story caught your eye, and this one's from The Guardian.
So this was a really interesting story about a schoolboy who's starting at a school in Fulham, and he was told that he's not allowed to attend the school unless he cuts off his dreadlocks, because the school felt that it wasn't a part of their uniform policy and the look that the school has, which is obviously heartbreaking for the boy and for his mum to be told that something that's kind of a fundamental part of their culture, their tradition, being a part of the Rastafarian culture, growing their dreadlocks is something that means so much to them, and he's being told that he's not allowed to attend the school unless he cuts them off.
Geoff, you're a former teacher. I mean, if you were the headmaster of this school, what would you do?
Well, I mean, it's hard, isn't it? With there's a lot of soft parenting out there, and I can see that they've taken this stance and that they don't want to roll back on it, because we all remember being teenagers. I actually used to use the phrase, "But it's my religion." You know, for anything that I wanted to do.
Happen?
Really? I said it.
Use that excuse. You've used that excuse.
Yeah, I've used that excuse
use it
personally.
today.
In the last week, I've used that excuse.
But would you get 18-year-olds coming in with a beard saying it's my religion, I want to keep it?
That could well be their religion in that case, to be fair. But I think I'm a bit torn on this, because on the one hand, I understand the need for strictness in schools, but equally, I really don't like people interfering in other people's business. And it's a bit weird, the school sort of trying to clamp down on individuality when this kid's name, was it Chickasee Flanders? I mean, he's heavily an individual already. And to be fair to the school, they have sort of softened their position a little bit, it seems.
Well, actually, we can speak to Chickasee's mum now. Tuesday, Flanders. Good morning to you, Tuesday.
Good morning.
So your boy now can wear his dreadlocks in the school. How important is that to you as part of your religion?
Very important, very, very important. Is identify who we are as Hebrew Israelite people. It identified our culture. It is so important.
Yeah. How did you react when the school said that they were willing to have him back?
Very much overwhelmed. I cried.
Yes.
I cried.
Why
I was
did
so
you cry?
happy because I was so happy.
Yes.
I was so happy. It's not just because he couldn't go back to the school. It's because the school finally realized that they made a big mistake.
We've actually got a photo of him that we can show now. Do you see that some people might think that this is a little bit over the top and maybe not quite understand your views?
Yeah, I can see that. You see, the point is people looking at it as me not listening to the policy and to the rules.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's more than that. It is not just the policy. The policy, I have no problem with the policy. My problem is the fact that they highlighted no dreadlocks and no braids. That was my
Tuesday,
problem.
what is the religious significance of dreadlocks?
It means you must not cut your hair. No shaving of the hair. It clearly says it.
But what would happen if you did? What's the significance religiously?
Religiously, it's like you breaking your faith. It's like if you hear you telling a child, don't touch something, and the child done it, how do you feel? Disappointed. And it's the same thing as the Creator. You will feel the same way.
And this has gone on for quite a while. What impact has it had on Chikazee?
A huge impact. It affected my son very terribly, very, very terribly. But, you know, with the great strength of the family and of everyone, my son is moving on now.
Will he go back to the school?
No.
So you've won the battle, but you're happy to move on?
I'm very much happy to move on.
Tuesday Flanders, thanks very much for joining us on Sunday Morning Live.
Thank you for having me.
So, I mean, that's sort of a story about people understanding faith, religious education. I remember doing divinity at school. It was called divinity. It's now called religious education. But that may be about to change, Jeff.
Yeah, there was the there was a commission for sort of like a review of religious studies, and there hasn't been one for 40 years, and which makes you wonder what that commission were doing for the other 40 years.
Yeah.
But they finally come out and said it might be a little bit outdated, that anybody that's been to school ever will know it's incredibly outdated. And they're talking about taking a more progressive view, you know, maybe calling it, was it religion and worldviews?
Yeah, yeah.
Which, I'll be honest, sounds like one of those meetings that went on too long. And it's
And that's what they came up with.
Yeah, and I think maybe we should be like with religion and worldviews, and no one really shot it down when it should have been shot down. But the idea being that you teach all sorts of things, including atheism, which I think would be a short lesson, really. It's like, don't believe it, move on.
There's no God.
Yeah, I'm not sure I really want to be involved in
Post-it note, yeah.
selling books for Richard Dawkins. But it's, I certainly wonder with RE, you know, at the end of the day, some subjects become anachronisms, like Latin. This happens over time, and maybe schools need to adapt the way that RE is disseminated across all subjects.
Jasper, do you think this will dilute the message?
I don't think so. I think if it's planned really well in just the way other curriculums are, it can be done really effectively. And I definitely agree that the curriculum, I've taught a bit of the RS curriculum as well. I'm a history teacher, but have taught RS. And it is one that's kind of very, very...
Do you think that it should open itself up to other religions? So you're a Sikh, is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I come from the Sikh faith, and there isn't actually much mention of many other faiths of the world or other beliefs or anything to do with atheism either. It is the main kind of 2 or 3 religions of the world.
Yeah.
And we're living in such a diverse world now, and our country has so many different faiths and backgrounds. And I think to do justice to young people, we should be teaching them about that before we send them off into the world.
OK, so moving on to the next story, Jeff. Now, this is a really unique film that's been shown, and it was opened on last Friday, and this is from the BBC.
Yes, this is a gentleman documentary maker that got permission from people that were in the last phase of life to spend a lot of time with them and film them, and even film, you know, they're literally their last breaths, which is obviously, you know, it's a controversial thing for some people. I personally, you know, I've had quite a lot of loss in the last 5 years, and I think that we do have a slightly immature relationship with loss in this country, and a lot of it comes from fear of the unknown, and it's one of those things that never gets easy. Once you've seen it once, it puts you one step down the road. So personally, I think this is brave and inspiring.
Jasper, what do you think of that?
I personally feel there's kind of 2 sides to it. I think the documentary does include a lot of the kind of weeks up until the death, so what it's like in a hospice, the nurses there, the doctors, and I definitely feel those people deserve a lot of recognition for the amazing work they do. But I personally feel, especially that moment of death is something that is so intimate and, for me, quite a sacred moment. And I feel that something should be left for the private and for the family. I feel we're putting so much on our TV screens of every little moment of our lives and everything we eat, every single thing we're doing during our day, and I feel like that kind of moment in life should be kept private for the family and for that person.
Well, let's have a look at a clip from the documentary itself where we hear from terminally ill Alan, whose wife Valerie had died a year earlier. He speaks about how he feels about nearing death.
Like I say, I don't mind. I've no pressing reason to stay. And given what I know, and I stress what I know rather than what I believe, because it comes out of my own experience of life, given what I know, I'm quite happy for it to happen, because I know where I'm going. I'm going to meet Valerie again, and I've got plans. We're going to take up ballroom dancing again.
And Jeff, it's a 20-second clip, but it's gripping because of the subject matter. But should we be talking about this now you've seen that?
Absolutely. Well, I work in comedy, where at the Fringe there's been a lot of powerful shows about grief and stuff, you know, and it's comedy, and this is a film, right? That this is going to come out as a film in cinemas.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying it's like, you know, the must-see date film of the year, you know what I mean? But there's obviously a place for it. And, you know, like that guy said himself, he said he's going to take up ballroom dancing. That humour is so crucial, because it's sort of like humour is a left turn before oblivion, and I think it's inspiring.
Well, let's speak to the director of the film, actually, now, Stephen Eastwood. Thanks for joining us, Stephen. What was it like talking to people, spending time with people in their final moments?
It was very humbling. I felt very privileged to be there with Alan. Alan I had come to know as a remarkable man, as you saw there, and it was Alan's invitation. He said he wanted me to be with him when he died, and I think that was very important to him, and it was a privilege to be in the room over those last days and hours.
Have you had any negative feedback from the film?
You know, it's been extraordinary. Whenever we screen the film, nobody leaves the cinema afterwards. We have hour-long Q&As about the film, and we've been struck by how many people find the film uplifting, but also how many people want to have a conversation about their own mortality.
I mean, there are so many topics that you could cover in a film. Why have you chosen death? What prompted you to do that?
Well, I think personally I felt very poorly informed about what happens when we die. I think that we are better informed about what happens when we're born, although that hasn't always been the case. And I felt that's how we maintain stigma and fear about something that is inevitable and natural.
But
so I wanted to know more.
For you personally, was there a moment where you thought, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do? Was there a bereavement in your family?
You know, I did have 2 bereavements before I started making the film, but I had already begun the research and development of this project. So I was in a kind of similar zone to some of the people I was meeting when the film was taking place. But I think art and film has a very key role in shining a light on taboos in our society, because sometimes we can bust those taboos and be more open about things we find challenging.
Did you find that people became more religious as they got closer to death, when they were contemplating it?
I mean, I met 4 remarkable people who were in the film, and some of them had religious frameworks and belief in where they were going that were couched in Catholicism and Christianity. Alan had a great spiritual belief in where he was going. Jamie did not. So I think everybody has a different way of forming ideas about what happens, because we don't have reports back from this universal experience.
Well, it's good to talk to you, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I've done some handbrake turns in my career, and this is as big as they get. We've gone from death to cereals.
Yeah.
Jeff, tell us about this story. It's in the Mirror, wasn't it?
Yeah, death and cereals, the only inevitabilities in life. They changed their Cocoa Pops thing because there was a young girl, 10-year-old girl, that said it was sexist, that their slogan was "loved by kids," was it approved by mums? And obviously I'm not digging out the girl, because I think it's great that she's campaigned and stuff, but it's obviously the story's been taken up by the press that it's sexist because her dad sometimes gives her Cocoa Pops, and she felt that excluded her. And I feel sorry in a way for Cocoa Pops, because they've been told they might have to ditch their cartoon character, they've had to reduce their sugar. Now they're sexist. I think in some ways they're the biggest victims of PC backlash.
But they're such a big company. Surely it's part of their responsibility
mostly
to
it will
not
be mums. I mean, this might sound
reinforce gender
controversial,
stereotypes.
but
This is not
gender
just mums
stereotypes-
giving cereal, is it?
Broadly speaking, it is, though. I mean, they must have done the market research. I mean, I know we're in London right now, but I bet you any money at home, 90% of people watching will be thinking, yeah, it's fine. And even if it is inaccurate, it doesn't exclude you from the experience, I give my son Cocoa Pops. I'm
I
not
do as well.
offended.
Well, not Cocoa Pops, but I did give my son cereal. So the two blokes here.
I just realised my wife's watching. I also give him really healthy cereal. it's a
Healthy, wholesome breakfast.
It's a weekend treat.
Jaspreet, what do you think?
The cereal campaigns that we still see today are something that was created back in the 50s, and I think that's still a reoccurrent thing that's even happening today. So I feel companies like Kellogg's really do need to think about their marketing, that we're not ascribing these gender roles, that the mum is the one that makes breakfast and cooks and cleans at home and the dad's going out to work. I think we really need to be careful, especially with young people and the young advertising that's aimed at them. We need to be careful about what lessons we're teaching them. And power to this girl that's written this letter and said that it's my dad who gives me breakfast, and that should be taken into account. I feel especially kind of companies like Kellogg's really do need to take that into account, what gender roles they're ascribing.
Yeah.
No, Jaspreet and Jeff, your comments have been loved by mums and dads.
I hope so.
Thank you. Thank you both very much indeed. Yeah, sure.
So he developed a love of animals while growing up on a farm in Ireland. So, not surprisingly, Noel Fitzpatrick became a vet. But not just any vet. He's known as the Super Vet, thanks to a series on Channel 4 which showcases his remarkable talents, including fitting pioneering artificial limbs to cats and dogs.
Noel is now embarking on a stage tour of the UK and Ireland to talk about his work and life, and June Sarpong went along to meet him and find out more about the man behind the TV personality.
He pushes the boundary.